Guys, welcome to this week's live. For those of you that were sitting around waiting for me, sorry. I have two lives today, two live events happening, one in a challenge and one here, and I was on the wrong platform. I was like, wait, this doesn't seem right. So here I am, live here with you today to talk about imposter syndrome. So I'm just pulling up my notes because I've got a lot on imposter syndrome. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Pam Godvoice, and I am your guide here on this here lovely little group, this little Facebook group. So, little, I always use that term, like this little thing. But I am I've been a therapist for over 20 years, working in mental health and addiction. And over the last, like probably 6 years, 7 years now, I guess, five, six, almost 7 years. I have been I've been a yoga teacher for over a decade, and I've been working with mental health professionals and yoga teachers and coaches and health and wellness experts to kind of do some internal work, working on the inner story, the inner journey, so that they can show up as the best versions of themselves in their job. And over the last 2 years, I've created a course and I've started teaching that same population, so heart-centered, who I call heart-centered CEOs, right? These heart-centered entrepreneurs that want to start their own entrepreneurial journey or start their own business, want to be and not like the kind of same mentality as being an employee, but actually stepping into the leadership role as a CEO. And what better topic to talk about than imposter syndrome, right? Because I have so many people say to me, like, well, I'm going to start my own business and I want to be successful, but I'm not a CEO. And yes, there's an emotional attachment around the concept of a CEO if you're, for some people, but if you've worked in corporate America and you've seen things, I don't have to get into the detail on those things, but if you've seen things that you're not real thrilled about, that you don't really kind of love having experienced or having witnessed, then you might not think of the term CEO as a positive term. But what I want you to embrace or start thinking about is this idea that as a CEO, your job is to hold the vision of the company, right? Your job is to keep your organization moving forward, whatever that looks like. And I don't care what title you put on it. The title that I have chosen is a heart-centered CEO, right? The idea is that this isn't corporate America. We're not out to, just make a buck. We're out to make an impact. We're out to help change people's lives. We're out to help people transform, right? Whether that's in their personal life or in their relationships or in their businesses, it doesn't matter. Their health, their wellness, whatever your journey, whatever what I call zone of genius, whatever your thing is, you need to own it, but you also need to step back and create from a place of business smarts, essentially, right? So one of the things that gets in the way of that, one of the things that can become a barrier, one of the things that we struggle with often is this idea of imposter syndrome, right? And most of us are familiar with what imposter syndrome is, but I'm going to go over that just to kind of give you everything soup to nuts here today. So imposter syndrome is also called like perceived fraudulence, and it involves a feeling of self-doubt and personal incompetence that persists despite your education, your experience, and your accomplishments. So it does not matter how many degrees you have, how many certifications you have, what you're an expert on, how many accomplishments you have, how much money you have in the bank. None of that matters to imposter syndrome. You can still experience this, even if you're like, no, I'm good. My bank account's good. I got a good job, whatever, right? Whatever the case may be, right? So the imposter feelings represent a conflict between your own self perception and the way other people see you. That's essentially what imposter syndrome is, right? So if I see me as someone that is afraid or worried or overwhelmed by decisions, and other people see me as somebody that's really confident in my decision making, There's a discrepancy there. And so imposter syndrome, much like lots of other, disorders that we have in the world of mental health, is an an alternate perception, essentially, right? So even when you're praised, you often discount your success as luck or good timing, and you don't believe you earned what you get. Even going as far to say, well, they had to promote me because I've been here the longest, or I only got into this program. This is like a school thing. I had somebody say to me recently, well, I only got into that program because there weren't enough people that applied. And I was like, how do you know there weren't enough people that applied? Did they tell you that? And she was like, no. Okay, well, how did you know? How do you know that? Well, I mean, they accepted me, so that's got to be the case, right? That's imposter syndrome. I don't actually deserve to be here. And part of the struggle with that is like the emotions that go along with that. If you're someplace that you feel like you don't deserve to be, you don't deserve a seat at the table, then you're always going to live from this perspective and look through this lens. So, as you, and what tends to happen here as a result of your beliefs about yourself is that you work harder and longer, you put more pressure on yourself. You think that, well, if I just miss this event, or if I just work through this weekend, or if I just do these other things, and then maybe I will be competent enough, I'll be capable enough. If I get this certification, if I learn this thing, if I become an expert in this, maybe I'll get there, right? But the perception is, if you just put in more effort, then you wouldn't feel like an imposter anymore. But that's not true, because it's not real in your head. It's not real in the world. It's in your head. It's a belief in your head. So just working harder isn't going to fix it. And some of you may have seen some of the videos that I've created around like this idea of working harder is not the way to find success. That's not it. This is what I'm talking about, right? Working harder just makes you spend more time behind your desk, basically. It doesn't get you anywhere. So this can actually happen in personal relationships as well. There's like the business working harder, but also in personal relationships where you're trying to prove your worthiness. But have you ever dated somebody that you feel like you've had this belief that like he or she was better than you in some way? And maybe it was financial, or maybe it was looks, or maybe it was popularity, or whatever, right? Thinking back to, high school and college and those timeframes. But that you feel like you constantly have to prove yourself. Sometimes this happens in adulthood. Oftentimes it happens in adulthood. We feel this need to prove ourselves. Like I'm good enough to be here. I'm good enough to have a seat at the table. Whether that table is business or personal, it doesn't matter. And you may even feel really guilty from pulling the wool over people's eyes. Like, God, if they knew who I really was, right? And I feel bad that I can't tell them who I really am. That's a component of imposter syndrome. So I want to tell you about my story with imposter syndrome, right? I have a couple. I have lots of stories, but I'm going to share one in particular with you. So the program launch that I did in February of this year, 2021. So I've had launched in February, launched last October, just launched again. Program Elevate Your Impact is running right now. And have a bunch of wonderful entrepreneurs in there, female entrepreneurs who are looking to become heart-centered CEOs that want to create their own course, their own offering, their own program, and they're showing up in amazing ways already to do that work. So anyway, my launch a year ago, or 9 months ago, 8 months ago, the night before, I had created this webinar. I had this list. I had people showing up. People had registered. It was going to be great. The content was great. And I'm laying in bed the night before the cart opened, right? The night before the first webinar, when the cart opened. And I'm a sleeper. So if you're like, oh, maybe this is normal for her, I am not somebody that like lays in bed worrying about things. It's not my natural. I know for some people it is. I have a husband who is his natural state. He's a worrier, he lays in bed and worries. I don't do that. So I was laying in bed with my eyes closed, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to take a few deep breaths and see if I can calm the central nervous system, right? Activate the parasympathetic response so I can fall asleep. And the thoughts that start going through my head is, Who do you think you are? What do you know? Why nobody's ever going to want to work with you? Are you even capable? Like, um, and maybe this is just me because one of my old stories is I used to like avoid doing hard work or sabotage my own success as a result of like these emotions coming up. Maybe you're just doing that again. Maybe you're just trying to hide from, um, you're trying to hide from the world. You're like pretending you're not really this good. You really haven't gotten this far. You really don't know this information. And I'll let you know a little secret. Every time I launch, I have these same fears. I have these same thoughts that arise like, oh, it's gonna bomb. Nobody's gonna take your course. Nobody's gonna register. Nobody wants to work with you. You're not capable enough, right? So this happens for many of us. This is what happens for me. And in the past, these stories would create for me this blockade where I would just stop because these stories would show up not like at the last second, right? And when I was in middle school, high school, I was a competitive figure skater, and I would like nerves, right? I'd be standing at the edge of the ice, ready to step on, waiting for them to announce my name, and I had just gone to the bathroom. Literally, my program was like 2.5 minutes long, or 2 minutes long. It wasn't like depending on the time frame. Started at 1.5 minutes, went up to 2.5 minutes, and so not a long time, right? And I would be like, oh my God, I have to pee so bad right now because nerves, right? They're about to announce my name. They're like, and they call my name, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. Imposter syndrome shows up in much the same way for me that like right as I'm about to step on the ice, right as I'm about to like launch the webinar, right as I'm about to go live on Facebook or some other platform, I go, oh God, do I know anything? Do I know enough? Am I capable enough? Am I going to be good at this? People are going to show up? People want to hear what I have to say, all those things, right? And so my old pattern, what I used to do is that I would just simply stop. I would just be like, okay, that's fine. You know what? I shouldn't be doing this. I would buy into the stories. You're actually not that capable. You actually don't know that much. You're actually not that smart, right? Maybe you should get certified in something else. Maybe you should become an expert in something else. Partly because my story has always been things have come easy to me, right? Like school was relatively easy for me. And it's not like a braggy thing. It's just like that's just how I was. That was just my experience, right? Things just click in my brain pretty quickly. And so when things don't click in my brain, or when I struggle with something, or when I feel like I'm not an expert at it, I want to throw in the towel. I'm like, I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm not cut out for this. I should go back to something that I'm good at, forgetting that we all start somewhere where we're not good at something, right? When I started as a therapist, I sucked. Like, I'll be totally honest. If you were one of my patients 20 years ago, I am sorry. I sucked. But I've come a long way. I've learned a lot. And as a result, I've been able to offer that learning and that growth to my clients. And the same holds true with like what I've done in coaching and the coaching platform that it came from. It really came from a place of like, let's work on the inner work. Let me be your therapist from a coaching perspective with coaching goals, right? So that was how I like worked my way into something different and expanded. But the thing is that imposter syndrome doesn't necessarily go away. And the interesting thing about imposter syndrome, which I kind of alluded to when I was just telling you about how like things have come easy for me and whatever, is that I read a book recently by a leading imposter syndrome researcher, Dr. Valerie Young, and she describes 5 main types of imposters in her book, The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women, and why capable people suffer from imposter syndrome, and how to thrive in spite of it. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, like check it out. But here's the basics, right? The basics are there are 5 types. The first one is the perfectionist. And as a perfectionist, you demand perfection from yourself. And since perfection is unrealistic, you can't meet those standards, so you beat yourself up. And any mistakes or missteps you have along the way just prove that you're not capable, that you're a failure. So you might avoid trying new things if you believe that you can't be perfect at them. This is a common one, and I've worked with a lot of people who say like, "Oh, I'm a perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist." Like the truth is, all of these All of these strategies are ways to not have to show up and be seen, right? If I give into my belief of who I am in this from this imposter syndrome perspective, then I don't have to show up as an expert, or I don't have to show up in a way out in the world where people could potentially reject me. So the perfectionist believes if their things are not perfect, if what they're offering or doing is not perfect, then the result is going to be rejection, judgment, and rejection, right? Ultimately, that's what we're all trying to avoid is rejection. But the truth is, there's no avoiding rejection. You hear me say this all the time. There's no avoiding it, so like do it anyway. But perfectionism is one style. The next one is the natural genius, and the natural genius, much like I just described for myself, not that I think that I'm a genius, is that things have always come relatively easily, right? Like you pick up a new thing and it's pretty easy, and you learn a new strategy or a new system or a new program, and you're like, oh, I got this. This is pretty easy. So you start to believe that things should always be this way, that things should always be easy, and as a result, you develop a belief that competent people can handle anything with little difficulty. So if something doesn't come easily, or if there's difficulty, right? I'll be totally honest. One of the things that was really difficult for me early on in my business was like Facebook ads. And I just kept being like, there's got to be like, there's something I'm missing. There's got to be a way. I've got to learn this thing. And so then I would be like, feel ashamed and feel embarrassed that my Facebook ads sucked, basically, that people weren't seeing them, that there was no conversions and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's the natural genius, right? The next one is the soloist, or like the individualist. And here you believe you should be able to handle everything solo, right? Have you heard the term solopreneur, like the solo entrepreneur? As great as that is, and as real as it is, when we start out, we are kind of all solopreneurs, right? We don't not hiring a team right away. But when you believe, this is like the person that believes that they can handle everything and that everything has to be to their standard, which is part of the reason why they don't hire on help, because I could never teach somebody to do it the way that I do it. But if you don't meet your standard, if you can't manage all of the things, you see yourself as a failure. And as a matter of fact, asking for help doesn't just mean that you failed at your own high standard. It means that you are a human, as a human being, are a failure. You're not capable, you're not competent, you're a failure, you suck, basically, right? The next next way that imposter syndrome can show up or does show up is in the role as the expert. So before you consider your work as a success, you need to learn everything there is to know about that topic, right? These are the individuals that have to master everything. That if I'm gonna teach lead generation and lead funnels, creating lead magnets and funnels into your email system, I need to know everything there is to know about it. I need to know every software that can be used. I need to know how to use them all. I need to be able to teach them all, right? So I need to be the ultimate expert of experts on everything I do. Or everything there is to know about a specific topic. And since you believe you should have all the answers, you consider yourself a fraud if you can't answer a question about the topic. So have you ever had somebody ask you a question about something that you do that's maybe a little bit outside of what you do, right? So I'm a business coach. I'm a self-development mindset and business coach. And sometimes I have people say to me like, hey, do you know how to use ClickFunnels which is a program, software for lead generation? And I'm like, I'm familiar with the concept of ClickFunnels, but I've never used the program. Right? I don't use ClickFunnels, so why would I know it? I've used MailChimp, I've used ConvertKit, right? I use Lead Pages. I've used lots of different things, but I've never used ClickFunnels. So why would I don't need to be an expert on ClickFunnels to say to somebody, hey, if that's your choice, use that, right? One of the coaches that I've worked with through the years, James Wedmore, he always says, I recommend the programs I recommend because I recommend them, That's his like stance, right? Like, so if I recommend something, it's because I recommend it. It's because I use it, and it's because I recommend it. So I'm not going to argue with you as to why I do or don't know something else. This is what I use. And I love that because it just kind of owns that, like, you don't have to be the expert on everything. You can still know the concept or the content and not know how to use the software that somebody's choosing to use. That's fine. And the fifth type is the superhero. So you link your competence to your ability to succeed in every role you hold. So that's like parent, child, employee, boss, spouse, like sister, friend, whatever. Every role that you are in, your competence is linked to your ability to succeed in those roles. So failing to navigate the demands um, simply means that you are inadequate. Right? Have you ever had a moment where you're like, God, for those of you that are parents, God, I'm a bad parent, right? Or oh, I'm a bad child, right? I've had those moments. I kind of jokingly say I'm a terrible mother. Um, but it's not from a place of imposter syndrome. It's like from a like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that thing. I'm not going to be at the bake sales handing out, collecting money and handing out food. And I'm probably not even going to bake for them. And um, yeah, because I don't want to. It's not who I am. Not that I don't love to bake. I have a kid who wants to be a pastry chef, so we definitely bake a lot around here. And now it's nice because she's 12 and I can just almost 13. I just like push it off onto her. Hey, you want this? This thing's happening at school. You need they're asking for people to bake. That's you. That's not me. All right. So those are the 5 types, and I have 6 strategies that you can actually use, that you can actively use on a daily basis to um, combat imposter syndrome. So the first one, strategy number 1, is to build awareness. So you have to become aware of what you're experiencing and how you're responding to that which is leading, like what's in front of you. Right? You have to first be like, okay, I'm aware. I'm aware that of those 5 strategies that I just named. Oh yeah, I gave you some examples. Oh yeah, that's me. I'm definitely the expert. I have to be an expert at everything, right? So then a project or something is put in front of you, and you're like, I'm going to spend the next 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years researching this thing instead of just making the list that somebody asks me for. Right? I have a woman who does some work for me who I adore, and she's very bright and very capable. And I'll say, hey, can you throw this stuff together for me? Just put together this list of things and like resources and grab them for me. And she says, yeah, I can do that. And then I give her a deadline, and she says, I don't know if I could do it by the deadline because, blah, 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 blah. And I say, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just need some concepts, like cool things. And I have to keep reinforcing that, right? But once you build awareness, you have the ability to be like, oh, I'm doing that thing again, or maybe I'm avoiding whatever the outcome is, whatever I don't want to have to experience. Maybe I'm avoiding, and that's fine. But maybe I'm just starting to recognize the style of imposter syndrome that I kind of hang out in, right? So that's 1, build awareness. Number 2 is to celebrate your strengths. So we tend to focus on the negative, right? We tend to focus on the lack, the failure, the things I'm not good at, the like, this is evidence. I'm not worthy of being here, all of those things. And so I would like you, the practice here is to take a moment and think about all the successes, strengths, and wins that you've had. And maybe if you're like, I feel like an imposter in my job, maybe you make a list of the successes and wins you've had in your job. Little things, right? Like, even if you discount your boss saying, hey, great job, write it down. Like, hey, praise from the boss, right? If it's relationship, write down relationship wins. And they can cross over. You can be like, I'm just going to write down all the wins I had this week, right? I recognized when I was having this emotional experience, and that's a win. So I'm going to write it down. I'm going to celebrate that. That's a strength. Not everybody can do that, Not everybody can go, oh, well, I'm having an emotional moment right now, and I want to take it out on my spouse. Most people just take it out on their spouse. All right, so we tend to focus, on the negative, like I said, and you start to think things like when you're lying in bed, am I capable? And the idea here is to, yes, you are capable, and keep coming back to your wins. Keep a win journal. Just grab a notebook and call it your win journal, and just write down all of your wins, your strengths, the positive things that you're experiencing, and celebrate them. Um, the third is to tell your inner critic to take a hike. So instead of entertaining the thoughts and allowing them to stop any forward momentum, tell them to get lost. Tell them you're not interested. I don't want this. And get on with the good stuff, the actual work of creating and sharing, right? So just embrace that you're capable. Tell your inner critic bye-bye. So the thing about this inner dialogue, right, self-talk, is that is related to self-talk is related to, creates your mindset, creates your beliefs, and you have the ability to say, hey, that's not true, or hey, that's not what I'm doing anymore. I'm not spending all of my time inflating and creating reasons as to why I'm an imposter and I'm not capable. What I'm actually doing is I'm leaning into expanding. I'm leaning into doing my own inner work and showing up in the world in some way, some meaningful way. Number 4 is lean in, right? I said it. Lean in, show up, be vulnerable, share your magic, allow yourself to be seen, heard, and felt, and let your people love you for you. And while you're at it, love them right back. So when you can show up, when you can be vulnerable, when you can post on your Instagram, hey, I'm experiencing some imposter syndrome, allow people to tell you that you're great and embrace it. And then share that back with them. Tell them how great they are. Show up for them, right? Be of service. Number 5 is recognize that imposter syndrome is a symptom of stepping outside of your comfort zone. So good job. Keep showing up. Basically, right? You don't experience imposter syndrome when you're hanging in your comfort zone. It doesn't show up. If you feel like you're good at something, you're not going to feel like an imposter. So keep pushing the limits. Keep showing up. Keep stepping outside of the comfort zone. And keep allowing imposter syndrome to show up in the background. And you can say, no thanks, go away, bye, I'm good. And finally, you got to cut yourself some slack. I say this all the time, but you've got to cut yourself some slack. Be kind, be gentle, and stop holding yourself to standards that you would never put on your best friend. Right? If your best friend came to you and said, hey, I'm struggling with this thing, you wouldn't be like, yeah, you suck. You should be doing better. You should do more research. You should become more of an expert. You would be like, you don't suck. I love you just as you are, right? So therein lies the work, doing those things. And I just want to close with you today with one little quote. I still have a little imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. That feeling that you shouldn't take me seriously, what do I know? I share that with you because we all have doubts in our abilities, our own power, and what that power is. And that's a quote by Michelle Obama. So if Michelle Obama is walking around with a little imposter syndrome, it's certainly not killing you. But take action. See what you can do to start combating it, and recognize it's showing up. Lean in, be vulnerable, tell your inner critic to take a hike, and cut yourself some slack. All right, that's it, guys. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week for another live. If you have questions, comments, concerns, things that you want to bring up, things that you want to share, things that you want me to address, post them in the comments, and I will be happy to answer them. Talk to you all soon. Have a magnificent, what's today? Wednesday. Enjoy your day.